Boxers are afforded a special place in the hierarchy of sports people by fans. Considering the risks they put themselves in, they are viewed by spectators as some of the bravest men around, but some are actually just showmen whose skills on the mic are better than their ring smarts. So who are the most overrated boxers? Today we are discussing the most overrated boxers of all time, so stay right where you are. First up, we have Anthony Joshua. Joshua's early career was full of KO wins, including big performances against guys like Joseph Parker, Dillian Whyte, and Alexander Povetkin, but he was never as good as his fans made him out to be. Joshua is clearly a big puncher, but his skills as a true boxer leave a lot to be desired, and the fact that he came into his 2019 fight with Mexico's Andy Ruiz simply expecting to turn up and win shows you the attitude the Big Brit has. Of course, Ruiz would go on to knock him out in the 7th round to take his WBA, IBF, WBO, and IBO heavyweight titles. Joshua would get back to winning ways shortly after, as Ruiz got sucked into the trappings which came along with being the heavyweight champ. He then retained his titles against Bulgaria's Kubrat Pulev before coming up against arguably one of the pound-for-pound best on the planet, Alexander Usyk, where he came seriously unstuck. The Ukrainian simply found Joshua out for what he is and exposed serious holes in his game, which suggests that when he comes up against skilled boxers and not just brawlers, he cannot cope. Joshua has now lost 3 of his last 5 fights, and with talk of Deontay Wilder possibly on the horizon, that record could be set to get even worse. What do you guys make of Joshua? Next, we're talking Oscar De La Hoya. Stay with us. Golden Boy himself was undoubtedly a good boxer, but he was nowhere the level some people made him out to be. With a career record of 39-6 by the time he finished in December 2008, as he retained on his stool against Manny Pacquiao, De La Hoya simply didn't have what it took when he came up against those truly great fighters. He would taste defeat for the first time against the world-class Felix Trinidad in 1999, who outboxed him over the course of their 12-round fight. He would again come unstuck less than a year later when he came up against the ever-dangerous Shane Mosley in June 2000. It was around this time when people began to ask questions about Oscar's true skill set in the ring, but he got away with it simply due to his good looks. He then put together a 4-fight win streak, but he would again come up against Mosley in September 2003, losing the WBA, WBC, IBA, and the Ring Light middleweight titles. De La Hoya then went 3-3 over his final 6 fights, proving he really didn't have the minerals against the elite guys in the division. He lost 3 huge fights against Bernard Hopkins, Floyd Mayweather, and the aforementioned Manny Pacquiao, but for some reason or another is still viewed fondly by fans of the sweet science. Maybe because he's proved himself a capable promoter? Who knows? How do you guys explain it? James DeGale is coming through now. Huge things were expected of Britain's James McGill after picking up gold at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, and although he somewhat delivered on his potential by becoming the IBF super middleweight champion, he never truly delivered on what he promised. DeGale would go 10-0 during his early career, including a notable win over English favorite Paul Smith, but he would soon come up against one of the toughest British fighters of his era in the shape of George Groves, who had no interest whatsoever in standing in front of DeGale and making him look good. Groves took DeGale's British super middleweight title that night at the O2, as well as the Commonwealth super middleweight title. He went on a decent winning run following the Groves disappointment, putting another 13-fight win streak, but this was against guys whom he was handed in a bid to make him look good. He would then come up against Badou Jack, who was certainly a step up in competition, but also a man he was expected to beat, but DeGale labored his way to a majority draw. In the very next fight, he was beaten in his own backyard by Caleb Traw, and a few fights later would retire after being outboxed by the up-and-coming Chris Eubank Jr. James DeGale could have been a threat on the global middleweight scene, but he never quite had what was required to achieve great things on the world stage, despite what his fanboys would say. We have Manny Pacquiao up next. Stay tuned. Okay, we get it. Pacquiao is undoubtedly a great boxer, but hear us out. There is an argument to be made that the Filipino favorite simply benefited from his willingness to fight and the sheer amount of times he took to the ring. Pacquiao finished his career with a record of 62-8-2, meaning he failed to win almost 14% of his fights. Of course, Manny should be given credit for how many times he took to the ring in an era when fighters would often box half of the amount of times he did, but simply being willing to take the ring doesn't instantly make you an all all-time great. Pacquiao first tasted defeat to unheard-of Filipino boxer Rustico Torrecampo before later losing to another largely unheard-of Thai fighter by the name of Midgyeon Singsurat. Granted, he would then go 6 years without tasting defeat before coming up against world-class Erik Morales, but similar to De La Hoya, Manny seemed to struggle in the huge fights and would later lose to Timothy Bradley and Juan Manuel Marquez. Pacquiao should also be remembered for being one half of arguably the most disappointing fight in history, as he was outpointed by Floyd back in 2015 in a fight which was arguably 5 years too late. He would later drop decisions to Jeff Horn and Yordenis Ugas before retirement. Give us your thoughts on Manny Pacquiao below. Mike Tyson is joining us now. There's no doubt the fact that Mike Tyson's reputation was hammed up somewhat thanks to the sheer power the man possessed. Yes, he was a world-class knockout artist, especially in those early days when the self-styled baddest man on the planet was starching all corners. But he was never a truly great boxer in the purest sense of the word. The world went back into shock in February 1990 as Tyson lost his WBA, WBC, and IBF heavyweight titles to massive underdog Buster Douglas. But this was just the tip of the iceberg considering what was going on in his private life. The champ was living way beyond his means, and ultimately, he let his lavish lifestyle impinge on his boxing career. He was then sent to jail for 6 years, of which he served 3, for the rape of Desiree Washington, before returning to the ring in August 1995. By this point, Tyson had resumed his life of excess, and when he was beaten in back-to-back fights by Evander Holyfield, the writing was on the wall. He would later drop big losses to Lennox Lewis, as well as journeyman Danny Williams and Kevin McBride, proving that Mike Tyson simply threw that massive amount of potential down the drain. For a convicted rapist, Mike Tyson bizarrely enjoys a popularity like no one with a rap sheet like his and history has ever enjoyed before. But we should not forget what he has been convicted of in the past. What do you guys make of Tyson these days? Next up, it's Amir Khan. Stay with us. British boxing prodigy Khan lit up the Olympics in 2004, taking the silver medal in the lightweight division. However, his almost performance in Athens would serve as a prophecy for his professional career, as he could never make that step up to compete with those truly elite guys ahead of him. Touted as the next big thing in British boxing in the mid-2000s, Khan was stunned by Bradis Prescott in September 2008, and he lost his WBO Intercontinental lightweight title. Khan was brutally knocked out in the very first round by a Bradis Prescott, who would lose 11 of the final 12 fights of his career. After putting together another run of form which saw him outpoint and admittedly over the hill Marco Antonio Barrera, Khan then scored arguably the biggest win of his career as he took out Marcos Maidana. But he would come unstuck again soon after losing back-to-back fights against Lamont Peterson and Danny Garcia. He would later lose to Canelo, Terrence Crawford, and Kell Brook, proving that the hype wasn't actually real. Give us your thoughts on Khan's career below. And finally, it's Muhammad Ali. You won't hear any complaints from us that Ali wasn't a great boxer. He was. But it's the oft-repeat claim that he was the greatest, which is why he has made our list of overrated boxers today. Fans with limited knowledge of the sport like to regurgitate assertions that Ali was the best boxer who ever lived when he quite clearly wasn't. Yes, he was a superb showman and backed up his words with his skill and craftiness inside the ring, but declarations that he was the best to ever lace up a pair of gloves are some way short of the mark, especially when we have undefeated boxers such as Floyd Mayweather, Joe Calzaghe, Richard Lopez, Rocky Marciano, and Andre Ward, who all retired as undefeated world champions. Ali fought way too long too and added to his previous losses to Joe Frazier and Ken Norton by also losing to Leon Spinks, Larry Holmes, and Trevor Berbick towards the end of his career. So yes, Muhammad Ali was a great boxer, but he definitely was not the greatest of all time, which is why he has made our list today. As always, thanks for dropping in on us today, and remember to tune in again next time. And why not do us a solid by liking and sharing today's video? Remember to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on more great videos in the future.